Intel has come a long way from being the butt of jokes in the PC gaming community. With their new Arc GPU and driver updates, they've made a huge leap in performance and compatibility. But how good are they really? Can you build a PC that can handle both editing and gaming on a tight budget, using only Intel parts? That's what we're going to find out today in this video. So buckle up and get ready for some surprising results. Now let's talk about the parts we used for this build. We went with an Intel Core i5-11400F, which is a great bang for your buck CPU that can manage both gaming and editing tasks. To keep it cool, we used the Cooler Master Hyper 212 Black Edition with some RGB flair, because why not? For the motherboard, we chose the Asus Prime B560MK, which has a neat trick to boost the performance of the CPU, but more on that later. For the memory, we splurged on 32GB of Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro SL RAM at 3200 megatransfers, because you can never have too much RAM, right? For the storage, we went with a dual drive setup, a 250GB Crucial P2 SSD for the OS and programs, and 2TB Seagate Barracuda HDD for our media files and games. And speaking of games, the star of the show is the Intel Arc A750 GPU, which is a limited edition card that we were lucky enough to get our hands on. If you want to see how it performs, check out our review video on the channel. For the case, we picked the Deepcool Matrix 40, which is a budget-friendly option that still looks sleek and has good airflow. To power everything up, we used the Cooler Master 650W 80+ white power supply, which gives us plenty of headroom for future upgrades. And finally, to add some more RGB goodness, we used 3 Deepcool RF120 RGB fans to light up our case. The total cost of this build was around $800, which is not bad at all considering what it can do. But enough talking, let's get building. The first thing you need to do is take out the motherboard from its box and place it flat on a surface with an anti-static bag underneath. Then we can install the CPU, which is quite easy. Just open the socket and align the gold triangle on the CPU with the one on the motherboard and drop it in gently. Do not touch the pins as they are very delicate. Then close the socket and secure it with the lever. The plastic cover should pop off automatically. Next we need to prepare our CPU cooler, which is the Hyper 212 Black Edition with RGB. This cooler comes with a lot of parts, so make sure you have everything you need. You will need the backplate, the 4 screws, the 4 nuts, 4 clips, the 2 brackets, and the nut driver. First attach the screws to the backplate where it says Intel, and then snap on the clips to hold them in place. Make sure you slide them in the middle position so they match the holes on the motherboard. Then flip over the motherboard and insert the screws through the holes. Secure them with the nuts using the nut driver. Do not over tighten them, just enough to hold them in place. Now we can install our RAM, which is 32GB of Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro SL at 3200 megatransfers. This motherboard only has latches on one side of the RAM slots, so open them up and align the notch on the RAM stick with the notch on the slot. Push it down firmly until it clicks into place. Do the same for the other stick of RAM and you are done. Next up is our SSD, which is a 250GB Crucial P2. This motherboard has a plastic clip instead of a screw to hold the SSD in place, which is pretty cheap, but hey, it works. Just insert the clip into the hole next to the M.2 slot and then slide the SSD in at an angle. Push it down until it snaps into the clip. Now we are ready to install our cooler onto the CPU. But first we need to apply some thermal paste. Just squeeze out a small pea-sized amount onto the center of the CPU. Then remove the fan from the cooler and attach the brackets to each side with a screw. Make sure they are facing down and align with the nuts on the motherboard. Then carefully lower the cooler onto the CPU and screw it into place with a cross pattern. Next, we need to put the fan back on the cooler, which we removed earlier. Just plug it into the PWM fan header that comes with the cooler and clip it onto the heatsink. Try to hide any excess cables under the cooler so they don't look messy. Do not plug in the RGB cable yet, because we will use a splitter later to connect it with the other RGB fans, since this motherboard only has a single RGB header. Now we are done with the motherboard, so let us move on to the case. First, we need to take off all the panels and install the fan hub in the back. This will allow us to control all the fans with one cable, which we will route to the front and plug it into the only fan header on the motherboard. But before we do that, we need to install the I/O shield, which is the metal plate that covers the port on the back of the motherboard. Make sure you align it correctly with the ports and push it firmly in on all 4 corners. Also make sure none of the metal tabs are blocking any of the ports, because that can cause problems later. Trust me, I have been there. Now we can install our motherboard into the case. I like to hold it by the cooler because that way I don't touch the PCB and leave any fingerprints on it. Not that anyone would see them, but still. Then align the motherboards with the standoffs in the case and screw it in with a 6 screw screws. Make sure they're tight, but not too tight. Next, we need to connect all our front panel connectors, which are the small wires that control things like power, reset, LEDs, etc. You can find where to plug them in on the motherboard or in the manual, but you just match them with what is written on the board. Then we also need to connect our front panel USB and audio cables, which are these bigger connectors that go in these ports on the motherboard. Just make sure you align them correctly with the pins and do not force them in. Finally, for this part, we need to connect our RGB cable from the cooler to our splitter, which will also connect all the other RGB fans. We will route this cable through the grommet here and plug it into the only header on the motherboard. Be careful not to bend any of the pins because they are very fragile. Then we need to install our hard drive, which is a 2TB Seagate Barracuda. We will take out the hard drive cage from the bottom of the case by unscrewing the 2 screws and sliding it out. Then we will screw our hard drive into the cage with 6 screws, 3 on each side. Then we slide it back into the case and secure it with the same 2 screws. We will also connect a SATA cable from the hard drive into one of the SATA ports on the motherboard. You can find this cable in the motherboard box. Next up, we need to install our fans, which are the Deepcool RF120 RGB fans. We will take off the front panel of the case and take out the 2 fans from the pack. We will slide them into the front of the case with the cables facing the right way and screw them with the screws that come with them. We will do this for both the fans on the front. Then we will connect the RGB cables from both fans to each other and to the back fan, forming a daisy chain. We will then plug this into our RGB splitter as well. We will also plug in the fan cables to our fan hub that we installed earlier. Next up is our power supply, which is a Cooler Master 650W 80+ watt unit. We will take it out of its box and slide it into the bottom of the case with the fan facing down. Then we will screw it in with the 4 screws that come with it. Then we will route all the cables that we need to where they need to go, such as the motherboard cable, the CPU cable, and the PCIe cables for our GPU. We will also plug in the SATA power cable to our hard drive and our fan hub. Next, we need to plug in our cables to the motherboard, starting with the big ATX cable that powers everything up. Just align it with the notch on the connector and push it in firmly. Do the same for the CPU cable that goes into the port on the top left corner of the motherboard, and also route your PCIe cables to where your GPU will go and leave some slack for them. Next is cable management, which is particularly important for both aesthetics and airflow. You want to organize your cables into groups and use cable ties where necessary. You can also use reusable cable ties for larger bundles of cables. In the end, your cables should look something like this. Next is the fun part, installing our GPU, which is the Intel Arc A750 limited edition card. This is a beast of a card that can handle any game that you throw at it. We will take it out of its box and remove any port covers and PCIe slot covers. Then we will remove any screws or brackets that are blocking its way and line it up with the slot on the motherboard. We will gently push it in until it clicks and then secure it with the 2 screws. We will also put back the bracket and screw in it as well. Then we will plug in the 8-pin and 6-pin connectors from our power supply and tidy up any loose cables. The last thing that we need to do is put back all of our panels, including the front, back, and glass side panels. And that is it. We've successfully built a PC. The next steps are turning it on. And seeing if it works, as well as going into the BIOS and doing things like enabling XMP, but we can do that later. Now that we have built our PC, let's see how it looks in action. Roll the build montage. Now we need to go into the BIOS and tweak some settings to get the most out of our system. To enter the BIOS, just press the key that shows up on the screen when you first boot up. For this motherboard, it is the delete key. You should see something like this. The first thing that we want to do is enable XMP for our RAM, which makes it run at its rated speed of 3200 megatransfers. We also want to check that resizable bar and APE2 are enabled, which will improve our GPU and CPU performance. Also make sure to go into the AI Tweaker tab and enable XMP2 and Smart Load Line. You can also change the core ratios to synchronize all cores to 4.4 GHz, which will give us a nice boost in CPU speed. Just select the CPU core ratio and change it from auto to synchronize all cores, and then set the value to 44. There are also some other things we can do with this CPU to unlock its full potential, such as increasing the power and current limit and enabling AVX512 instructions. To do this, go to the internal CPU power management section and max out all the values there. Also change the time window for boosting to 56. Then go to the AVX AVX related controls and change AVX 512 from auto to enable. And that's it. Press F10 to save and exit and hit OK. Then you'll want to do all the usual stuff like install Windows, which is pretty easy, so we won't show it here. After installing Windows, we also decided to do a quick overclock in our ARC A750 GPU after installing the drivers. We used the same settings that we did in our review video, which was plus 40 on the boost and plus 100 millivolts on the voltage offset, while also maxing out the power limit to 228 watts. Now that we've built our PC, let's see how it performs in some benchmarks. We will start with 30Mark TimeSpy, which is a popular test for gaming performance and stability. If our PC can manage this, it can handle anything. And as you can see, our PC passed the test with flying colors and we got a score of 10,805. That is pretty impressive for a budget build. Next, let's test our CPU with Cinebench R23, which is a benchmark that measures how well a CPU can render 2D scenes. We'll run the 10-minute burn-in test, which will push our CPU to its limits and see how hot it gets. And look at that, our CPU only reached a maximum temperature of 59 degrees, even with the power limits unlocked. That's all thanks to our Hyper 212 cooler, which is doing an excellent job of keeping things cool. And our score is also incredibly good, 9,833. That is a lot of rendering power. Next, let's test some productivity benchmarks, starting with Blender, which is a 3D modeling and animation software. We will use the A750 GPU to render some scenes in the Blender benchmark, which includes some complex models and lighting effects. And wow, look at that score. 1527.73. That is amazingly fast for a GPU render, and it shows how well the A750 can handle 3D workload. And finally we have Premiere Pro, which is a video editing software that we use to make these videos. We will use the Puget Systems benchmark, which is a real-world test that renders various scenes and effects using different codecs on both the GPU and CPU. We see fairly good rendering speeds on this machine, which result in an overall score of 439, which is not bad at all. You can also see that we got a GPU score of 40.6, which shows how well the A750 can accelerate video editing tasks. So there you have it. Our PC performed very well in all the benchmarks we threw at it, and we didn't encounter any issues or crashes along the way. That's pretty impressive for a budget PC using only Intel parts. Now that we've seen how the PC performs on some synthetic benchmarks, let's see how it manages some real games. We will test it in some popular titles at 1080p resolution and see how well our A750 GPU can handle them. We'll also use Intel's XeSS technology, which is a new upscaling feature that can improve the image quality and performance of games. Let's start with the classic competitive shooter, CSGO. We will run it at all low settings and see how many frames per second we can get. And look at that, we got an impressive average FPS of 290.8 FPS, with decent 1 and 0.1% lows of 142.1 and 41.9 FPS respectively. That is more than enough for a smooth and responsive gameplay experience. Next up we have a more demanding game, Cyberpunk 2077. This game is known for its stunning graphics and ray tracing effects, but also for its high system requirements. We run it at its medium preset with XeSS set to balanced and ray tracing set to medium as well. It'll be interesting to see how XeSS performs on ARC as well, and the results are not bad at all. We got an average of 56.5 FPS with 1.1% lows of 40.4 and 17.8 FPS respectively. It was a decent experience and it felt smooth enough to drive around and complete some missions adequately. Next up we have Forza Horizon 5, which is a racing game set in an open world environment. This game is also incredibly beautiful and detailed, but it is also very well optimized for different hardware configurations. We'll run it at high preset with XeSS set to balance and see how fast we can go. And wow, look at that performance! We got 108.2 FPS on average, with 1 and 0.1% lows of 52.4 and 4.7 FPS respectively. That is a surprisingly pleasant experience, although we did notice some occasional stuttering here and there, but nothing too major. Next up we have another competitive shooter, Rainbow Six Siege. This game is also immensely popular and fast paced, so we need high frame rates and low latency to play well. We will run it at low settings with no anti-aliasing at all and see how it performs, and the results were particularly good. We got an average of 137.5 FPS with stable 1 and 0.1% lows of 90.2 and 81.8 FPS respectively. There was no stuttering or lag to speak of, and the gameplay was exceptionally smooth and fluid. And last but not least, we have Spider-Man Remastered, which is a superhero game that lets you swing around New York City in style. This game is also very graphically impressive and fun to play, but it is also quite demanding on the GPU. We'll run it at the medium preset with XeSS set to balance and ray tracing off, and see how good it looks and plays. And the results were pretty impressive. We got an average of 124.8 FPS, with 1 and 0.1% lows of 51.5 FPS and 22.1 FPS respectively. That is an incredibly enjoyable experience that is more than playable. So what do we think of our budget all-Intel PC build? Well, we think it's awesome. For just $800, we managed to build a PC that can handle both gaming and editing with ease. We use the Intel Core i5 11400F CPU and the Intel Arc A750 GPU, which are both great value components that offer a lot of performance. We assessed our PC in some synthetic real-world benchmarks, and we were overly impressed by the results. Our PC scored high in 3D Mark TimeSpy, Cinebench R23, Blender, and Premiere Pro, showcasing its capabilities in both gaming and editing workloads. Our gaming performance was also particularly good, with the Intel Arc A750 GPU delivering smooth gameplay in popular titles such as CSGO. We also used Intel's XeSS technology, which is a new upscaling feature that can improve the image quality and performance of games. Overall, we think this budget all-Intel PC build is a smart choice for anyone looking for a reliable, powerful system that won't break the bank. It shows how far Intel has come in terms of performance and compatibility, and how well their CPU and GPU work together. We had a lot of fun building and evaluating this PC, and we hope you enjoyed watching this video as well. Anyways guys, that's all for today. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Also make sure to check out this video on screen right now.